The wedding of Jean Yin and Ling Wei was the talk of the town. But on our wedding night, Ling Wei pushed me away. Don't be a buzzkill. She dragged the best man, Xiao Yuming, into a game of truth or dare, publicly asking me about the details of our sex life. Her best friend, Lin Shan, shrieked, "Do you dare let young Master Qiao kiss your collarbone?" As I crushed the wine glass in my hand, Ling Wei was laughing, tilting her neck up. Bring it on. 3 months later, the financial headlines read, Qiao Corporation's stock plummets 90%, heir Xiao Yuming 10 billion in debt. At the divorce hearing, I threw down the surveillance footage. Miss Ling, please return the 1.28 million bride price on the spot. As she lunged at me hysterically, I sidestepped. You are not worthy of my bed. The deafening electronic music nearly threatened to overturn the gilded chandeliers of the Platinum Palace banquet hall. The air was thick with the cloying sweetness of expensive champagne, the richness of cigars, and the lingering, mingled perfumes of the guests. The crystal lights refracted a glaring glare, striking the fine clothes and fake smiles that moved through the hall, making one's head spin. Jean Yin stood by the main table, his perfectly tailored black suit making his figure appear even more upright and tall. He held a crystal glass that had barely been touched, the amber liquid sloshing slightly inside. The formulaic smile on his face had long been worn away by nearly 10 hours of clamor, leaving only a layer of indelible fatigue and a trace of intensely suppressed coldness in the depths of his eyes. Mr. Jean, congratulations, congratulations. A middle-aged man with a beer belly and a greasy face squeezed over, holding a wine glass, his voice loud enough to drown out the music. Marrying the eldest daughter of the Ling family, a union of giants. In the future, won't a city be yours to command, Mr. Jean? Huh? Jean Yin didn't even lift his eyelids, merely tapping his glass symbolically against the rim of the other's, making a crisp clink. You're too kind, Mr. Wang. His voice was low, devoid of warmth, like a piece of ice. That Mr. Wang had been softly rebuffed. The smile on his face froze for a moment, and after mumbling a few more pleasantries, he turned sullenly to find another target. Jean Yan's gaze pierced through the sea of bobbing heads, landing precisely on Ling Wei, who was surrounded by a group of young men and women not far away. She wore that priceless, custom-made main gown, studded with tiny diamonds, like a proud swan. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement and alcohol, and she was surrounded by her best friend Lin Shan and several groomsmen, laughing so hard she could barely stand. Wei Wei, another one. Today's your big day. Lin Shan shrieked, egging her on, and shoved a brightly colored cocktail into Ling Wei's hand. Exactly, Mrs. Jean, you won't have this much freedom later. The most eye-catching one in the group of groomsmen, Xiao Yuming, the infamous prodigal son of the Xiao family, was also leaning close to Ling Wei, his sticky gaze roaming over the lines of her bare shoulders and neck, his words laced with a frivolous tone. Ling Wei giggled and tilted her head back, downing the drink in one go, her movements carrying a reckless sort of bravado. A few drops of liquor trickled down her delicate chin, dampening the collar of her wedding dress. She paid it no mind at all, instead slapping the table with even more excitement. What's there to be afraid of? Even married, I, Ling Wei, am still Ling Wei. I won't miss out on any of the fun. Jean Yan's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. He set down his glass, parted the crowd, and walked straight over. The music was too loud. As he approached, he only heard Xiao Yuming lowering his voice, speaking to Ling Wei with a seductive smile. Later, for the wedding night games, how about we play something thrilling? Guaranteed to be a night you'll never forget. Ling Wei's eyes instantly lit up like ignited fireworks. Really? Young Master Qiao, you better not be bluffing. Jean Yan's hand, with an unquestionable force, rested lightly on Ling Wei's bare, slightly feverish arm. Wei Wei. His voice wasn't loud, yet it strangely penetrated the noisy background, reaching Ling Wei's ears clearly. It's getting late. It's time to go to the bridal chamber. You've had a lot to drink. You should rest. The smile on Ling Wei's face vanished abruptly. She turned her head, her exquisitely made-up eyes looking at Jean Yan. The excitement and haze in them quickly faded, replaced by a layer of obvious impatience and annoyance at being interrupted. She forcefully shook her arm, breaking free from Jean Yan's grasp. Jean Yan, her voice rose, laced with drunken willfulness. Are you annoying or what? What time is it? Everyone's having fun. Can you not be a buzzkill here? She waved her hand as if shooing a fly. If you're tired, go up by yourself. Don't mind me. The surrounding jeers and whistles instantly grew louder. Lin Shan laughed even more exaggeratedly, covering her mouth. Oh my, Mr. Jean, starting to be controlling already? Our Wei Wei hasn't had enough fun yet. A knowing smirk played on Xiao Yuming's lips as he added fuel to the fire. Mr. Jean, it's a joyous day. Don't be so serious. If sister-in-law wants to play, just let her have her fun, right? Don't worry. We're watching her. Nothing will go wrong. He deliberately enunciated the word watching with a heavy, meaningful tone. Jean Yin stood rooted to the spot, the last trace of polite warmth vanishing completely from his face. He looked at Ling Wei. Her eyes held only annoyance at his presence and a craving for the impending excitement, without a shred of the shyness a bride should have or any regard for her new husband. The jeering laughter from the crowd pricked him like needles. He said nothing more, but his gaze, as deep and cold as a frozen pond, silently swept over Ling Wei's excited face, over Qiao Yuming's provocative smile, over Lin Shan's gloating expression, and finally returned to Ling Wei, fixing on her for a moment. Then, without a word, he turned, parted the crowd, and walked towards the side door that led from the banquet hall to the hotel's guest room area. His back was straight, yet it radiated a cold, unapproachable hardness. Behind him, Ling Wei's disgruntled complaints and the group's even more unrestrained jeers were cut off by the heavy door, fading into a muffled blur. The corridor was laid with a thick carpet that absorbed all footsteps, leaving only the low hum of the central air conditioning. The icy mask on Jean Yan's face finally cracked, revealing the surging fury and the profound embarrassment of being publicly humiliated that lay beneath. He tugged at his collar, the feeling of restraint suffocating. He walked to the door of the presidential suite, which was adorned with a large character, and stopped. Instead of entering immediately, he took out his phone, the cold light of the screen illuminating his expressionless face. His fingertips swiped rapidly across the screen, bringing up an interface connected to the suite's internal security system. Live feed from several hidden cameras popped up, the living room, the minibar, and even the bedroom doorway. The images were clear, the angles cleverly chosen. He stared at the empty, luxurious suite on the screen, his gaze as sharp as a poison blade. His fingertip hovered over the virtual start recording button for a few seconds, but in the end, he didn't press it. He put away his phone and pushed open the heavy door that symbolized a new life. The room was filled with the scent of new furniture and expensive fragrance. The massive wedding bed was covered with a bright red silk quilt, on which rose petals were arranged in a tacky heart shape. Everything was as perfect as a showroom, lacking only the most important thing, warmth. Jean Yin walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the night view of city, which sparkled below like a river of stars. The glass reflected his blurred silhouette and the bottomless chill in his eyes. He undid his tie and tossed it casually onto the expensive velvet sofa, the movement carrying a trace of imperceptible irritation. Time ticked by, second by second. The lights outside the window gradually went out, and the city's din subsided. The door to the suite remained unopened. After an unknown amount of time, a commotion could finally be heard from outside, growing closer. Ling Wei's drunken, shrill laughter was particularly jarring, along with Lin Shan's sharp assent and the jeering catcalls from Qiao Yuming and the other groomsmen. Bang! The suite door was thrown open with great force, slamming hard against the wall behind it. Ling Wei was practically draped over Qiao Yuming's arm, stumbling in as she was surrounded and pushed forward by the group. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes glazed over. The hem of her wedding dress was trampled and filthy, and the thin gauze on her shoulder had slipped halfway down, revealing a large expanse of pale skin. She paid it no mind, completely absorbed in her giggling, her entire being radiating an overindulgent euphoria. The bridal chamber. Haha, we're here, we're here. Lin Shan was the first to rush in, spinning around dramatically like a queen surveying her territory. Wow, CEO Jean really is generous. This place is big enough for us to liven things up properly. She deliberately emphasized the words, liven things up, drawing a round of knowing jeers. Supporting Ling Wei, Xiao Yuming's gaze swept brazenly over the luxurious furnishings of the living room before finally landing on Jean Yin, who stood in the shadows by the window. A corner of his mouth lifted in an undisguised sneer of contempt and provocation. Yo, CO Jean, not asleep yet? Waiting for your wifey? Don't worry, we're bringing the bride back to you now, all in one piece. He intentionally delivered the words, all in one piece, with a lewd ambiguity. The other groomsmen joined in the jeering, whistling as their eyes roamed over Ling Wei's body. Ling Wei pulled free from Xiao Yuming's grasp and took 2 unsteady steps forward. When she saw Jean Yin by the window, the last remnants of a smile on her face were instantly replaced by impatience. What are you still doing here? She frowned, her tone abrasive. Didn't I tell you to leave me alone? You're in the way. Jean Yin slowly turned around. He didn't look at Ling Wei. His icy gaze, like a searchlight, slowly swept over the group of uninvited guests at the door. Xiao Yuming, Lin Shan, and the other 3 groomsmen, their faces flush with excitement, waiting for the show to begin. His line of sight finally settled on Xiao Yuming's face, a face filled with smugness and malice. Wedding night games? Jean Yan's voice, not loud, rang out in the excessively quiet living room. Yet, it landed like an ice pick, carrying a strange, penetrating force that instantly suppressed all the boisterous laughter and noise. He took 2 steps forward, stepping out of the shadows by the window and into the bright light of the crystal chandelier. There was no expression on his handsome face, only a heart-palpitating chill churning in the depths of his eyes. Fine. He paused, his gaze sweeping over Ling Wei's face, which was flushed with alcohol and excitement. The corner of his mouth pulled up with extreme slowness, forming a cold, almost cruel arc. But, let me remind you all, his voice was terrifyingly steady. If you want to play, you have to be able to afford the consequences. Some prices are very painful to pay. The air seemed to freeze. The smile on Xiao Yuming's face stiffened. Lin Shan's mouth hung open, forgotten. The groomsmen also subconsciously reined in their playful grins. Ling Wei looked at Jean Yin with drunken, hazy eyes, seemingly not hearing clearly or simply not caring what he said, only finding his demeanor to be a killjoy. TSK, Mr. Jean, it's a joyous day. How boring to say all this. Xiao Yuming quickly readjusted, letting out a sneer in an attempt to regain control of the atmosphere. We're just trying to liven things up, to leave a deep impression on sister-in-law. Right, sister-in-law. He reached out to put his arm around Ling Wei's shoulder. But Ling Wei slapped his hand away with a drunken willfulness. Exactly. Jean Yin, stop trying to scare people. What's with the deep and brooding act? So lame. She turned to Xiao Yuming and Lin Shan, her face once again plastered with that reckless, excited smile. Young Master Xiao, Shan, don't mind him. What about the thrilling game you promised? Let's start. I can't wait. You got it. Lin Shan responded immediately, magically pulling a colorful empty wine bottle from her purse and slamming it onto the gleaming marble coffee table in the center of the living room. Same old rules. Truth or dare. Whoever the bottle points to has to take the dare. Today is our Miss Ling's wedding night. So the questions. She drew out her words, her eyes glancing at Jean Yin with naked malice. Of course have to be explosive. And the dares. They have to be worthy of such a beautiful night. Right, they have to be explosive. Xiao Yuming immediately chimed in, his eyes coiled around Ling Wei like a venomous snake. Sister-in-law, do you dare to play? What's there not to dare? Ling Wei, her head swimming from the alcohol and the atmosphere, waved her hand with bravado and sat directly on the carpet by the coffee table, completely disregarding her expensive wedding dress dragging on the floor. Come on. Whoever backs out is a coward. Jean Yin stood where he was, like a cold, silent sculpture. He watched as Ling Wei eagerly joined in, watched as she cast trusting and expectant glances at Xiao Yuming and Lin Shan, and watched as she shot him looks of annoyance and impatience. He clearly saw Xiao Yuming and Lin Shan exchange a triumphant, malicious glance. He said nothing. He only walked, with extreme slowness, to the bar in the corner of the living room. A brand new set of crystal glasses was placed there. He picked one up, his fingers long and steady. Then, he turned slightly, his back to the boisterous group, facing the large decorative mirror behind the bar. In the mirror, the scene in the center of the living room was clearly reflected. Ling Wei, Xiao Yuming, Lin Shan, and the groomsmen sitting in a circle, the empty wine bottle beginning to spin on the smooth coffee table. His fingers tightened silently. The cold, hard touch of the crystal glass transmitted through his skin. He lowered his eyes, looking at his own blurred reflection in the glass, and also at the spinning bottle in the mirror. The mouth of the bottle wobbled, and, finally, with a fated malice, pointed steadily at the crimson-cheeked, dazed-eyed Ling Wei. "Whoa!" Lin Shan was the first to scream, dancing with excitement. "Vivi, it's you. A great start. Quick, choose. Truth or dare." Ling Wei looked at the mouth of the bottle with drunken eyes and giggled. "Dare. Of course it's dare. Truth is so boring." "Good. Gutsy." Xiao Yuming immediately clapped, the malice in his eyes almost overflowing. He leaned forward slightly, staring at Ling Wei, and said, word by word, with perfect clarity and a nauseatingly familiar and suggestive tone, "Sister-in-law, since it's your wedding night, then this dare should be fitting for the occasion, right? How about this?" He paused deliberately, keeping everyone in suspense before saying in that cloying tone, "You, right now, in front of all of us, tell us. Your husband, Jin Yan, what is his most unbearable flaw in bed? We want details." Boom! The question exploded like a bomb in the luxurious living room. The groomsmen erupted in a deafening, malicious roar of laughter and whistles. "Fucking awesome, young Master Chiao. What a killer question. Spit it out, sister-in-law. We're all waiting. Can CEO Jean even get it up?" "Huh." Lin Shan's face was flushed with excitement as she shook Ling Wei's arm frantically. Wei, say it. Don't be shy. We're all friends here." The bluntness of the question seemed to stun Ling Wei for a moment, a fleeting bewilderment flashing across her face. She instinctively lifted her eyes towards the bar. Jin Yan still had his back to them, standing by the counter. He was still holding the crystal glass. From Ling Wei's angle, she could only see his straight, yet unusually cold and solitary back, and the reflection of his lowered profile in the mirror. He didn't react. No angry reprimand, no embarrassed attempt to stop them, not even a twitch of his shoulders. He was like a statue that had lost all warmth. In Ling Wei's alcohol-soaked brain, this dead silence was twisted and interpreted as another signal. Tacit approval? Or perhaps he simply didn't dare to resist. A surge of emboldened, more reckless excitement shot up, instantly overpowering the trivial hesitation. She even felt that Jin Yan's spineless demeanor gave her more face in front of her friends. "Look, my man, Ling Wei's man, doesn't even dare to fart in front of me. Him." Ling Wei scoffed, her voice thick with drunkenness and a deliberate, attention-seeking frivolity. It rose, carrying clearly to every corner of the living room. What's there to say about him? So pretentious. A wooden block. All he knows is to follow the rules. No fun at all. What I can't stand the most is that she never finished her sentence. Crack! An extremely crisp and ear-piercing shattering sound exploded like a clap of thunder, instantly drowning out all the laughter and clamor. The entire living room fell dead silent. Everyone, startled by the sudden noise, shuddered and followed the sound with their eyes. By the bar, Jin Yan still had his back to them, but the knuckles of the hand holding the crystal glass were a ghastly white from excessive force. Several menacing cracks, centered on his tight grip, were spreading wildly across the translucent surface of the glass. Tiny crystal shards, mixed with the remaining amber liquid, trickled from between his clenched fingers, dripping onto the smooth marble countertop with soft tap, tap, tap sounds. In the dead silent room, the sound was clear enough to make one's hair stand on end. Bright red blood also snaked along the sharp edges of the fragments, crawling over the back of his pale hand, drop by drop, falling onto the bar and quickly blooming into a small, startling patch of red. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. The previously boisterous living room was now so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Only the sound of the dripping blood beat, like a drum, on everyone's nerves. The smugness and malice on Xiao Yuming's face froze instantly, as if doused by a bucket of ice water, leaving only stunned disbelief and a barely perceptible trace of fear. Lin Shan's mouth hung open, the half-shouted jeer stuck in her throat, her face ashen. The other groomsmen were silent as cicadas in winter, their eyes darting away, not daring to breathe. The sudden, blood-tinged silence had sobered Ling Wei up considerably. She stared at Jean Yan's bleeding hand, at the glaring red on the bar, and then at his still unmoving back that radiated a terrifying chill. An icy, unprecedented sense of fear shot up her spine without warning, making her shiver violently. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but her throat felt blocked, unable to produce a single sound. Jean Yan slowly turned around. His movements were slow, yet they carried the heavy, oppressive weight of an impending storm. His face was still expressionless, even calmer than before, but his eyes, deep and bottomless, were no longer just cold. They churned with a destructive storm that was almost tangible. His gaze, like two cold searchlights, passed over the dumbstruck crowd and finally locked firmly onto Ling Wei's blood-drained face. He didn't look at his own bleeding hand, as if the wound didn't exist. His eyes were fixed only on Ling Wei. That look was cold, sharp, with a piercing scrutiny that saw through everything, and also a terrifying indifference that comes after one's heart has completely died. Ling Wei felt a chill run through her under his gaze, and she instinctively shrank back, avoiding his eyes. The reckless excitement and frivolity from moments ago were crushed to dust by this silent stare, leaving only guilt and a tremendous sense of foreboding. Jean Yan's gaze lingered on her face for a full 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds stretched on like a century. Then, he shifted his gaze away, as if Ling Wei were merely an insignificant stranger. His eyes swept over Xiao Yuming, Lin Shan, and a few best men who were silent as cicadas in winter, finally landing back on his own hand, which was still dripping blood. He slowly, one by one, uncurled his tightly clenched fingers. Clatter! A few pieces of blood-stained crystal fell onto the bar. He didn't even glance at the mess and the blood, as if it were nothing more than insignificant dust. He raised his injured hand, casually grabbing a neatly folded, snow-white silk napkin from a bar and haphazardly wrapped it around his bleeding palm. The white silk was quickly stained red, a shocking sight. Throughout the entire process, he didn't make a sound, nor did he show a single extra expression. Only the wrapping motion carried a calmness that was almost cruel. After doing all this, he lifted his eyes and once again looked at the group of people in the center of the living room. The corner of his mouth twitched upwards, extremely slowly and slightly. It wasn't a smile, more like a cold and sharp signal. "Play," he spoke. His voice wasn't loud, even a bit hoarse, yet it was like an ice-tempered blade, cleanly cutting through the frozen air and piercing into everyone's ears, carrying a chilling calmness. "Continue." That word, play, was like a block of ice smashed into the dead-silent living room, making everyone shudder again. After speaking, Jean Yan didn't look at anyone else. He walked straight to a large single sofa in the corner of the living room and sat down. The sofa was a deep ink-blue velvet, which, against his black clothes and his blood-stained, silk-wrapped hand, created a strange and grimly beautiful aesthetic. He leaned back slightly, crossing his long legs. His posture could even be described as relaxed. But his eyes, like a deep pool without ripples, quietly and heavily watched the group by the coffee table, like a fierce beast lurking in the dark, assessing its prey. The formless pressure was even greater than when he had crushed the wine glass earlier. The air was so thick it was hard to breathe. A muscle twitched on Xiao Yuming's face. Jean Yan in this state was more terrifying than if he were furiously throwing things. Beneath that calmness, there was clearly an all-devouring frost. He suppressed the strange unease in his heart, forced a dry laugh, and tried to regain control of the situation. Ha ha! Mr. Jean is magnanimous. This is how it should be. Sister-in-law, you see, Mr. Jean has spoken. Let's continue. Continue. He reached out to spin the bottle on the coffee table, but his fingertips trembled slightly. Wait, Lin Shan suddenly shrieked, her voice exceptionally sharp and piercing due to a mixture of nervousness and a suppressed excitement. As if grasping at a life-saving straw, or as if she had found a new point of stimulation, she abruptly pointed at Jean Yan's hand wrapped in the blood-stained silk. Mr. Jean, your hand. It's bleeding. How unlucky. On such a joyous day to see blood. Her words were cut short. Frozen by the gaze Jean Yin cast her way. There was no emotion in his eyes. He just glanced at her calmly. But Lin Shan felt as if a venomous snake's tongue had licked her neck. A chill shot up from the soles of her feet to the top of her head, and the rest of her words were stuck in her throat. Her face instantly turned deathly pale. It's nothing, Jean Yin said faintly, his voice flat. His gaze returned to the spinning bottle. Don't stop. 3 words, spoken lightly, yet they carried an unquestionable command. Xiao Yumming swallowed hard and, bracing himself, flicked the bottle with force. The empty bottle began to spin wildly again on the smooth coffee table, emitting a low hum. This time, everyone's eyes were glued to it. The atmosphere was even more tense than before, tinged with a strange, forced excitement. The mouth of the bottle wobbled, its speed slowing, creating a suffocating sense of suspense. Finally, unsteadily, it once again came to a stop in front of Ling Wei. It's sister-in-law again, one of the best men called out subconsciously, his voice strained. Ling Wei's face was even paler than before. She looked at the bottle's mouth pointing at her, then shot a quick glance at the silent figure on the sofa in the corner. Jean Yan's gaze was also on her, calm and waveless, yet made her feel as if she were sitting on pins and needles. The reckless abandon she had felt earlier had completely dissipated in the face of Jean Yan's silent stare and the glaring blood on his hand, leaving only panic and a strong impulse to escape. I choose truth, she blurted out, her voice carrying a barely perceptible tremble. She didn't dare mention dare again. Truth. Xiao Yumming raised an eyebrow, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by malicious excitement. He leaned forward, staring at Ling Wei, a fake smile plastered on his face. But he deliberately lowered his voice, a suggestive, intimate guide. Sister-in-law, truth has to be truly truthful. You didn't finish answering the last question, so it doesn't count. This time, how about something a little more substantial? He licked his lips, his gaze darting towards Jean Yin before quickly retracting. He lowered his voice and asked, Be honest, was there ever a moment when you felt that I, Xiao Yumming, knew more about romance, was more to your liking than your husband, Jean Yin? The question was even more explicit, more malicious than the last. It directly provoked the couple's relationship, even carrying a naked sexual innuendo. Young Master Qiao, Lin Shan exclaimed, then quickly covered her mouth, but her eyes were frighteningly bright, looking at Ling Wei with full expectation. The few groomsmen also held their breath, their eyes darting back and forth between Ling Wei and Jean Yin in the corner, waiting for the show to begin. Ling Wei's face instantly flushed crimson, half from shame and indignation, half from the lingering effects of the alcohol. She snapped her head up, meeting Xiao Yumming's eyes, which were filled with suggestion and coercion, then frantically looked towards Jean Yin. Jean Yin was still sitting there, his posture unchanged. Only the fingers of the hand wrapped in the silk scarf curled ever so slightly, and the glaring red on the scarf seemed to bleed a little further. Under the immense pressure, the alcohol began to numb her nerves again, and a reckless, self-destructive impulse surged through her. She didn't want to lose face in front of her friends, and even less did she want to be intimidated by Jean Yan's deathly demeanor. When had she, Ling Wei, ever been afraid? She took a deep breath, her drunken willfulness regaining the upper hand. Her voice rose, carrying a deliberate flirtatiousness, as if wanting to prove something. Of course you're fun, young Master Qiao. Much better than some passionless block of wood. At least you know how to make someone happy. She didn't dare to say yes directly, but even a fool could understand the meaning behind her words. Oh, Lin Shan was the first to shriek, clapping her hands in excitement. Vivi, well said. A huge, triumphant smile instantly bloomed on Xiao Yuming's face, like a cat that had successfully stolen a fish. He lifted his chin provocatively in Jin Yan's direction. Jin Yan remained silent. Only his crossed legs were uncrossed with extreme slowness. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, the hand wrapped in a blood-stained scarf hanging loosely. This subtle change in movement made his entire aura suddenly sharpen, like a bow being slowly drawn. Good. Sister-in-law is straightforward. Xiao Yuming was smug and satisfied, feeling he had completely regained control of the situation, even suppressing the unease Jin Yan had brought him. He spun the bottle again. Come on, let's continue. Next, the bottle spun, this time pointing to Lin Shan. Ikuzidare. Lin Shan immediately shouted excitedly. The fear from before seemed to have been washed away by Ling Wei's answer, and she returned to that feverish excitement of wanting to stir up trouble. She shot a provocative glance at Jin Yan in the corner, then leaned close to Ling Wei's ear and said with malicious excitement, in a voice just loud enough for everyone in the living room to hear, Vivi, dare to play a big one? Let young Master Chiao kiss your collarbone? Just once, to liven things up for everyone. After all, C.O. Jin is so magnanimous, he won't mind, right? That last sentence was deliberately shouted towards Jin Yan. Boom! The scale of this dare instantly detonated the atmosphere. Holy crap! Lin Shan, you're too wild. Kiss the collarbone. Young Master Chiao. Go for it. Sister-in-law, don't chicken out. The groomsmen erupted in even wilder jeers and whistles, their eyes shining, wishing they could see the risque scene immediately. Xiao Yuming was also stunned. Then his face flooded with ecstasy and a kind of twisted excitement. He looked at Ling Wei, his gaze so hot it could almost set her on fire, filled with undisguised desire and a pressure that screamed, if you don't dare, you're a coward. Ling Wei was completely dumbfounded. She never thought Lin Shan would propose such an outrageous demand. The collarbone? That place. It's too intimate. She subconsciously clutched the collar of her dress, the color draining from her face as she looked pleadingly at Lin Shan. But Lin Shan just winked at her, her face full of encouragement and a "don't be afraid, we're here for you" expression. She frantically looked towards Jin Yan again. Jin Yan was still sitting there. Only this time, he slowly, very slowly, raised his head. Those bottomless eyes were no longer calm and waveless, but were now clearly churning with a blizzard that was bone-chillingly cold, enough to freeze the soul. That gaze was like two ice picks dipped in deadly poison, stabbing straight at Ling Wei. In that gaze, there was no anger, no jealousy, only a complete understanding, a cold mockery that saw through everything, and also a finality like a death sentence. Ling Wei's entire body shuddered as if struck by that gaze. A chill shot from the crown of her head to the soles of her feet, shocking even the last vestiges of drunkenness out of her. And she abruptly realized what she had just said, what she had just done. She looked at Xiao Yuming's impatient face, at Lin Shan's gloating expression, and then at Jin Yan's gaze, which was like he was looking at an inanimate object. And an immense sense of fear and shame engulfed her like a tsunami. No, you can't. And she shrieked, her voice thick with sobs, and shrank back violently, trying to dodge Xiao Yuming's outstretched hand. Xiao Yuming, get away from me. Lin Shan, are you crazy? This isn't right. Sister-in-law, just play along. Don't be so uptight. How could Xiao Yuming let such a golden opportunity slip by? Emboldened by the alcohol and the goading of the crowd, he grew audacious, reaching out to grab Ling Wei's arm while his other hand feigned a move towards her shoulder and neck. Just once. CEO Jin hasn't said a word. See how magnanimous he is. Get lost. Ling Wei was utterly panicked, struggling desperately. Her expensive wedding dress was pulled into a state of disarray. And the scene instantly descended into chaos and ugliness. Just as Xiao Yuming's hand was about to touch Ling Wei's slipped shoulder strap, just as Ling Wei let out a terrified scream. An extremely soft, extremely cold sneer like an ice bead hitting the floor, clearly pierced through all the noise and chaos. It was Jean Yen. And he had finally moved. From that deep blue velvet sofa, he slowly stood up. His movements were unhurried, yet they carried the heavy, crushing pressure of a toppling mountain. He stood straight, his tall figure casting a heavy shadow under the brilliant crystal chandelier, instantly enveloping the center of the living room. All movement, all sound at this moment came to an abrupt halt. Xiao Yuming's hand froze in midair. The lewd smile on his face solidified. Lin Shan's mouth hung open, forgetting to breathe. The few groomsmen who had been jeering looked as if they had been choked. Ling Wei's scream was also stuck in her throat, leaving only frightened gasps. Jean Yan's gaze, like a tangible blade of ice, slowly swept over Xiao Yuming's hand, frozen before Ling Wei, over Lin Shan's face, twisted with terror, and finally, it landed on Ling Wei's face, which was as pale as paper and filled with panic and discomposure. His eyes were cold, indifferent, and carried a condescending, utter disdain. And then he spoke. Ni's voice was not loud. It was like a heavy hammer, word by word, syllable by syllable, striking the dead-silent living room with absolute clarity. Ling Wei. For the first time tonight, he had called her full name clearly. Not Wei Wei, not wife, but her full name, cold and distant. You just said he was better than me? His gaze shifted to Xiao Yuming, the corner of his mouth curling into a smile devoid of any warmth, a smile tempered with venomous mockery. Better in what way? At coaxing you? Better at knowing how play these kinds of sordid tricks? Xiao Yuming's scalp tingled under his stare, and he subconsciously wanted to retract his hand. But Jean Yan's gaze had already moved away, locking back on Ling Wei, his voice suddenly turning sharp, carrying a soul-piercingly cold interrogation. So, right now, has he made you happy? Ling Wei trembled violently, her lips quivering, unable to utter a single word. The immense shame and fear were about to make her faint. Jean, you no longer looked at her. Ni's gaze, like a cold searchlight, slowly swept over Xiao Yuming, Lin Shan, and the few groomsmen who were silent as cicadas in winter. Everyone's gaze fell as if they were being stared down by a viper, a chill running down their spine. The game is over, he announced, his voice calm, yet carrying an undeniable finality. He took a step, walking towards the center of the chaos. His stride was steady, each step seeming to land on the heartbeat of the crowd. He walked up to Ling Wei. Without looking at her, he reached out directly and seized the wrist of the hand Xiao Yuming still had frozen in front of her. Ni's movement was as fast as lightning, his strength astonishing. Caught off guard, Xiao Yuming felt as if his wrist was caught in an iron clamp, the bones on the verge of shattering. The intense pain made him let out a piercing scream, the smugness and lechery on his face instantly replaced by agony and terror. Jean Yen, what are you doing? Let me go. Xiao Yuming broke out in a cold sweat from the pain, struggling with all his might. Jean Yan's face was expressionless, his fingers like cast iron, not moving an inch. He tilted his head slightly, his cold gaze falling on Xiao Yuming's face, which was contorted with pain. His voice was low, carrying a hair-raising calmness. Young Master Xiao, you've put your hand in the wrong place. Before his words had even faded, he gave a sharp twist of his wrist. Crack! A clear, cringe-inducing sound of a bone fracturing echoed abruptly in the dead-silent living room. Ag! Xiao Yuming let out an inhuman scream. His body went limp as if his bones had been removed, and he collapsed, clutching his wrist, which was bent at a bizarre angle. He writhed on the floor, howling in agony, tears and snot streaming down his face. Lin Shan and the groomsmen were scared out of their wits. Screaming, they stumbled backward, staring at Jean Yen as if they had seen a ghost, their faces etched with nothing but boundless terror. Ling Wei was even more frightened, collapsing weakly to the floor. She looked at Xiao Yuming, who was rolling and screaming on the ground, and then at Jean Yan's hand, the one wrapped in a blood-stained silk scarf, the one that had just snapped a man's wrist. Her mind went blank, filled with an endless, bone-chilling despair. Jin Yan didn't even glance at the wailing Xiao Yumming on the floor. He shook his hand as if merely flicking off a speck of dust. Then, he leaned down slightly, his icy gaze falling upon Ling Wei, who was slumped on the floor, trembling like a leaf in the wind. His voice wasn't loud. It was like a chilling wind from the ninth circle of hell, piercing her ears with clarity. Ling Wei, remember tonight. Remember the fun you chose. Remember these people you brought. And remember. He paused, the cruel curve of his lips deepening. Each word was like a carving knife, gouging deep into Ling Wei's soul. What you with your own hands played with and lost. With that, he straightened up, not sparing another glance at anyone on the floor. He took out his phone, the cold light of the screen reflecting off his impassive face. His fingertips swiped quickly across the screen, pulling up the security system interface. Without hesitation, he pressed the stop recording button. On the screen, everything that had just happened was clearly displayed, from Ling Wei choosing dare, to Lin Shan's demand for a kiss on the collarbone, to Xiao Yumming reaching out, Ling Wei screaming and struggling, and finally, to him snapping Xiao Yumming's wrist. Every frame, every line of dialogue was recorded with absolute clarity. He put his phone away and turned, walking towards the bedroom. His steps were still steady, his back straight and solitary, like a sharp blade just sheathed after tasting blood. Behind him were Xiao Yumming's pig-butchering screams, the terrified sobs of Lin Shan and the others, and the desperate figure of Ling Wei, collapsed on the floor, soulless and ashen-faced. The luxurious bridal suite was a wreck, leaving only the stench of blood, fear, and cold embers. The tightly shut bedroom door was like an insurmountable chasm, completely separating two worlds. The heavy bedroom door closed silently behind Jin Yan, completely shutting out the pig-butchering screams of Xiao Yumming, the terrified sobs of Lin Shan and the others, and Ling Wei's desperate whimpers from the living room. The door panel was like a cold watershed. Outside was a hellish mess. Inside, a deathly silent tomb. Jin Yan didn't turn on the lights. Outside the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, the late-night lights of city had thinned considerably, like scattered stars, stingily casting their cold light into the room. They outlined the vague silhouettes of expensive furniture and illuminated one side of his face. There was no expression on that face, only an expanse of frozen indifference. He walked to the window and stood with his back to the door. His right hand, wrapped in the blood-stained silk scarf, hung by his side. Wisps of pain emanated from it, bringing a strange sense of clarity. He slowly raised his left hand, looking at the security app's interface on his phone screen. The video file he had just recorded lay quietly in the storage list, its file name automatically generated as a cold string of a date and time code. His fingertip hovered over the play button for just a moment before swiping down without hesitation. He opened his contacts, found a name labeled Lawyer Chun, and dialed it. The call was answered almost instantly. A steady and capable male voice came through, tinged with the hoarseness of being awakened late at night, yet devoid of any weariness. "Mr. Jin?" "Lawyer Chun." Jin Yan's voice was devoid of any ripples, as calm as if he were discussing tomorrow's weather. "I have a situation over here. I need you to handle it immediately. Please, go ahead." Lawyer Chun on the other end immediately snapped into professional mode, his tone becoming serious. "First, call the police. The address is the presidential suite on the top floor of the Platinum Palace Hotel. Someone was stirring up trouble and attempted indecent assault. I stopped him in self-defense, and the other party's wrist is broken. There is surveillance evidence at the scene." Jin Yan's speech was steady, his thoughts clear. "Second, prepare divorce papers. The woman is Ling Wei. There is conclusive evidence of a major fault during the marriage. My terms are, she leaves with nothing. All assets listed in the prenuptial agreement, including the cloud-top apartment in her name, are to be reclaimed. The $1.28 million dowry the Ling family received will be recovered in full, not a cent less." There were 2 seconds of silence on the other end of the line. Lawyer Chun was clearly shaken by these sudden, information-dense instructions in the dead of night. But, as expected of Jin Yan's most trusted personal lawyer, he quickly processed it and responded, "Understood, Mr. Jin." I'll handle the police report immediately and will emphasize the surveillance evidence and your injuries. The divorce agreement and property claim. The draft will be in your email before dawn. Evidence. The video and audio recordings. I'll send them to you shortly. Jean Yin cut him off, his gaze falling on the hand wrapped in a silk scarf. The glaring red seemed even more ferocious in the dim light. Clear enough. Got it. Shen Lu's voice was decisive. Mr. Jean, your hand? A superficial wound. Jean Yan's voice remained flat. Handle your business. Yes. The call ended. Jean Yin casually tossed his phone onto the low cabinet beside him, making a soft thud. He walked to the massive walk-in closet and flicked on the lights. Cold white light poured down, illuminating rows of expensive but cold clothing. Without a glance at the suits symbolizing his new marriage, he walked straight to the innermost section, pulled open an inconspicuous drawer, and took out a set of impeccably ironed, unlabeled, dark gray cashmere loungewear. He swiftly unbuttoned the blood-stained formal suit, the expensive fabric carelessly discarded on the carpet like a dirty rag. Cold water rushed over the wound on his right palm, bringing a sharp, stinging pain. The cut wasn't deep, but it was messy, torn by crystal shards, the skin and flesh split open. He cleaned it expressionlessly. The sting of the antiseptic on the wound, paradoxically, made his chaotic thoughts clearer and sharper. The clamor in the living room seemed to have subsided, leaving only intermittent, suppressed sobs and Xiao Yuming's pained groans. Next came the urgent knocking and inquiries from hotel security, followed by the calm, negotiating voice of the assistant lawyer sent by Chun Lu. It was chaotic, but being brought under control in an orderly fashion. Jean Yin changed into the clean loungewear and rewrapped his hand with fresh gauze. He walked back to the bedroom, but instead of lying down, he sat in the single armchair by the window. Outside, the city skyline was beginning to show a touch of gray light. Dawn was approaching. He picked up his phone again, ignoring the missed calls and the explosion of WeChat messages, mostly from the Ling family and Ling Wei's sycophantic friends, and directly opened an encrypted financial trading app. The screen's eerie blue light reflected in his cold pupils. His fingertips swiped quickly across the screen, pulling up the stock code and real-time chart for Xiao's group, QY Group. Xiao's main business was high-end restaurant and hotel chains. In recent years, its expansion had been aggressive, leading to a high debt ratio. The stock price was already inflated like a magnificent castle built on quicksand. The corner of Jean Yan's mouth curved extremely slowly into a cold, temperatureless arc, an arc tempered with the intent of destruction. He opened his contacts, found another name labeled K, and dialed. Boss. A voice devoid of emotion, with a metallic quality, came from the other end, clearly on standby, 24/7. K. Jean Yan's voice was low and clear, each word like a bullet cased in ice. Target, QY Group. Leverage, 10 times. Direction, short. Initial capital pool, Alpha, 7. Strategy, coordinate with market news. Break through all support levels. I want to see it. He paused, his eyes fixed on the false prosperity of Xiao's K-line on the screen, and enunciated the cold verdict, word by word, turned to dust and ashes. Understood. 10 times leverage, short QY, break all support. Capital pool Alpha, 7 is ready. K's voice showed no fluctuation, only absolute obedience and execution. Coordination with market news will require a trigger point. Jean Yan's gaze shifted to the window, where the silhouette of city, it was gradually becoming clear in the dawn light. He remembered Xiao Yuming's filthy hand reaching for Ling Wei, remembered the disgusting lust and triumph on his face. The trigger point will come soon. Jean Yan's voice was terrifyingly calm. Is a sufficiently sensational scandal of the rich and powerful weighty enough? There was a moment of silence on the other end, then the reply. Sufficient. Public opinion is expected to peak within 12 hours. Coordinating with market operations will maximize the effect. Do it. Jean Yin hung up. He put down the phone and sank deep into the soft backrest of the armchair. The faint light of dawn cast shifting shadows across his face through the massive floor-to-ceiling window. A dull ache throbbed from his right palm, a reminder of last night's absurd and humiliating farce. But now what surged within him was no longer anger, but a cold, almost cruel calm. The gears of revenge, under his precise command, had begun to turn silently and at high speed. Law, money, public opinion. Each link would become a cold garrote to crush his enemy. He closed his eyes, conserving his energy. He paid no more mind to the woman outside his door, his wife in name only, and her pathetic state of wailing and despair. In his heart, the woman named Ling Wei, along with the nightmare she brought, had completely become a thing of the past. The sky was about to brighten. In the corridor outside, the presidential suite on the top floor of the Platinum Palace Hotel, the air was so heavy you could wring water from it. Just as the sky was beginning to lighten, several uniformed police officers stood at the door with solemn expressions, conversing in low voices. The hotel's duty manager and head of security stood by, looking anxious, their foreheads beaded with sweat. The suite door was ajar, and from within, the faint sounds of a woman's suppressed sobs and a man's pained groans could be heard. The assistant lawyer sent by Chun Liu, a young man with gold-rimmed glasses and a meticulous expression, was holding a tablet and calmly showing something to the leading officer, his speech steady. "Officer Zhang, this is the situation. My client, Mr. Jin Yin, was in his own honeymoon suite when he was subjected to malicious wedding night hazing by a group led by Qiao Yuming. They inflicted severe verbal and behavioral insults and demonstrated indecent intent towards my client and his wife, Ms. Ling Wei. We have the complete on-site surveillance video as evidence, including the key footage of Mr. Qiao Yuming attempting to forcibly touch Ms. Ling Wei's body and the necessary defensive actions Mr. Jin Yin took to stop the illegal violation. Mr. Jin himself sustained an injury to his palm during the conflict, which has been initially treated by the hotel's medical staff." He paused and pulled up another document. This is a notarized copy of Mr. Jin and Ms. Ling Wei's prenuptial agreement, which clearly stipulates the rights and obligations of both parties during the marriage. Ms. Ling Wei's actions last night have seriously violated the principles of marital fidelity and mutual respect, constituting a major fault. Mr. Jin has formally entrusted our law firm to initiate divorce proceedings. Officer Zhang frowned, looking at the video clips and documents on the tablet. The footage was clear, the sound jarring. Qiao Yuming's leering face and his hand reaching for Ling Wei, as well as Jin Yan's final, clean defensive move, were all irrefutable. He nodded, his tones softening slightly. The chain of evidence is complete. Mr. Jin is the victim, and his defensive actions were within reasonable limits. As for Qiao Yuming's side, before he could finish, the suite door was yanked open. Ling Wei rushed out. She was still wearing the filthy, strap-slipped wedding dress. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup had long been ruined by tears, and her eyes were red and swollen like walnuts. She saw the police and the lawyer, and, as if grasping a lifeline, or perhaps as if completely cornered, she cried out hoarsely, "Police! Officer! Arrest Jin Yin! He intentionally injured someone. He broke young Master Qiao's wrist. He's a madman." She lunged forward, trying to grab Officer Zhang's arm, but was discreetly blocked by an officer beside him. The assistant lawyer pushed up his glasses, his voice devoid of any fluctuation. "Ms. Ling, please watch your words." Mr. Jin's actions were in self-defense, supported by ample evidence. On the contrary, your friend Mr. Qiao Yuming, Ms. Lin Shan, and others are suspected of picking quarrels, provoking trouble, and attempted indecent assault. The police will handle this according to the law. Nonsense! What indecent assault? We were just playing around. Ling Wei shrieked hysterically, pointing at the assistant lawyer. It was Jin Yin. It was his setup. He deliberately recorded it to frame us. He wanted to dump me all along. You're all in this together. Her cries echoed in the empty corridor, sounding particularly shrill and feeble. Inside the suite, Qiao Yuming's wails seemed to grow louder, mixed with Lin Shan's tearful attempts to comfort him. "Brother Yuming, just bear with it. The ambulance will be here soon." Officer Zhang's frown deepened, growing impatient with Ling Wei's irrational behavior. "Ms. Ling, please calm down. We will investigate the facts of the matter. Now, I must ask you and the other parties inside to come back to the station with us to cooperate with the investigation and give a detailed statement." He gestured to the officers beside him. I'm not going. Why should I go? I'm a victim. Ling Wei struggled, her panicked eyes darting around until they landed on the ajar bedroom door, where there was only dead silence. As if remembering something, she suddenly rushed towards the bedroom door, pounding on the heavy wood panel, her voice shrill and tragic. Jin Yan, come out. What kind of man are you, hiding in there? Come out and make things clear. Why would you do this to me? Open the door. Open this door for me. From within the door, there was only silence. No response at all. It was as if no one was inside. Ling Wei's pounding and screaming were like fists hitting cotton, receiving not the slightest reaction. This utter disregard was more terrifying and despairing to her than any angry rebuke. She slid down the door and sat on the floor, the skirt of her wedding dress spreading out around her like a discarded, broken doll, capable of nothing but helpless whimpers. The assistant lawyer watched all of this with a blank expression and said to Officer Zhang, "Officer Zhang, Mr. Jin has injured his hand and is also under extreme emotional distress. He needs to rest. I will be fully responsible for all subsequent legal matters. Here is my power of attorney." Officer Zhang nodded, understood. Then we'll take the others back first. He waved his hand, and the police officers entered the suite. Soon, Xiao Yuming, with his wrist in a simple splint, his face as pale as paper and sweating from the pain, was helped out. Following him were the weeping and ashen-faced Lin Shan and two other dejected groomsmen. The group was led away by the police, and the corridor finally fell silent, leaving only Ling Wei slumped outside the bedroom door, her sobs low and desperate, and the faint sounds of hotel staff carefully cleaning up the mess in the living room. Inside the bedroom, Jin Yan was still sitting on the sofa by the window. The morning light had brightened considerably, casting a pale golden glow over half of his body. He had his eyes closed as if asleep. Only his right hand rested on the armrest of the sofa, the white gauze wrapped around it glaringly conspicuous in the light. Ling Wei's hysterical cries outside, Xiao Yuming's wails, the police's questioning. All the sounds clearly penetrated the heavy door. He heard everything perfectly, but he had no reaction, not even an eyelash tremble. It wasn't until the commotion outside had completely subsided, leaving only Ling Wei's intermittent sobs, that he slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were clear, without a trace of sleepiness, only a bottomless coldness and a calmness that had everything under control. He picked up the phone he had tossed on the low cabinet. The screen lit up, displaying an encrypted email just sent by Lawyer Chun. The subject was concise: draft divorce agreement and progress of QY short selling plan. He opened the email and scanned it quickly. The body of the email was brief and to the point. Mr. Jin, the draft agreement has been prepared according to your instructions. Key points: 1. The wife is at major fault. Key surveillance screenshots and audio summaries attached. 2. Full recovery of the 1.28 million bride price. 3. Recovery of the cloud top apartment under the wife's name. Prenuptial agreement already specified it as a conditional gift from the husband. 4. The wife's other personal belongings to be cleared out within a limited time. It has been sent to the Ling family and Ling Wei's personal email simultaneously. Regarding public opinion, the news of Xiao Yuming's Platinum Palace scandal has been released through reliable channels and is gaining traction. On the QY stock front, Team K has established an initial short position and is awaiting the public opinion storm. Attached were the detailed draft agreement and scans of several notarized documents. Jin Yan's gaze lingered for a moment on the lines full recovery of the 1.28 million bride price and recovery of the cloud top apartment under the wife's name. That large flat, cloud top, located in a prime downtown area, was the engagement gift he had given Ling Wei, worth tens of millions. Ling Wei had countless times shown it off in her circle of friends, calling it her status symbol. A cold arc formed on his lips. Status? Soon, she would be nothing. He exited the email and opened a financial news app. The homepage was calm for the time being, but at the bottom of the trending list, a new term with a trending tag was climbing at a visible speed. Hashtag Chow Family Air Wedding Night Scandal hashtag. Clicking on it, although there were no specific details yet, all sorts of sensational headlines and speculations had already begun to spread. Breaking. Heir of Chow Corporation embroiled in a wedding night drama. Blood scene at the scene. Police dispatched to Platinum Palace Hotel in the early hours, suspected out-of-control hazing at a rich scion's wedding. Groom acted in self-defense. Young Master Chow sent to hospital with a fractured wrist. The inside story is shocking. Very good. The spark had been lit. Jin Yin turned off his phone and leaned back into the sofa. He needed to rest. The storm to come required him to maintain absolute clarity and strength. As for the crying woman outside the door, he couldn't even spare her a shred of attention. Her only remaining value was to sign the divorce papers and become the last straw that breaks the Chow Corporation. The aftershocks of the absurd farce on the top floor of the Platinum Palace Hotel, like a stone thrown into a stagnant pond, sent ripples spreading and distorting at an astonishing speed, eventually turning into a monstrous wave that swept through a city's upper-class circles. In just a few hours, the explosive news about Chow Corporation's heir, Chow Yumming, molesting the bride on his wedding night and having his wrist broken on the spot by the groom, Jin Yin, had spread like wildfire through various secret and semi-public channels in A-city circles of the wealthy, socialites, and finance. Details were constantly embellished, becoming more and more outrageous as they spread. Have you heard? That kid Chow Yumming, on Jin Yan's wedding night, in front of the groom, almost did. TSK. To the bride. It was more than that. I heard that when Jin Yin rushed in, that Chow guy's hand was already inside the wedding dress. Who is Jin Yin? How could he stand it? He crippled one of his hands on the spot. Serves him right. Chow Yumming has always been audacious when it comes to women, but this time he really messed with the wrong person. Jin Yin is notoriously ruthless. Jin Yin is pretty unlucky too, marrying that woman from the Ling family. TSK. Ling Wei is no pushover either. I heard she's wild. How else would she attract someone like Chow Yumming? The Chow family has lost a tremendous amount of face this time. Old Master Chow must be furious enough to die of a heart attack, right? Lost face. It's more than that. Do you think Jin Yin will let the Chow family off? Just wait and see. There's a good show coming. Gossip spread like a virus. Yet in the chairman's office on the top floor of the QY Group headquarters, the atmosphere was even more frigid than the winter outside. Behind a massive mahogany desk, Chow Jinshan, the helmsman of the Chow family and a man in his 60s who commanded respect without being angry, had a face ashen with rage. His chest heaved violently, and his hands gripped a freshly printed, sensationally titled online expose. Although the accompanying photos were blurred, one could still make out the entrance of a suite at the Platinum Palace Hotel. Chow Yumming was being supported by police officers, his wrist in a brace, his face a mask of pain and humiliation. Bastard! You wretched creature! Chow Jinshan slammed the document onto the desk with a loud bang, causing the middle-aged man, standing meekly before him, Chow Yumming's father and the current CEO of QI Group, Xiao Guodong, to tremble. Dad, calm down. Yumming. He's young and foolish. He must have been set up. Xiao Guodong wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, attempting to make excuses. Set up. Chow Jinshan shot to his feet, pointing a trembling finger at his son's nose. What kind of setup? Huh? The security footage is crystal clear. The police have already classified it, causing a disturbance. Attempted indecent assault. The evidence is irrefutable. Chow Yumming laid his hands on the man's bride, on their wedding night, in their bridal suite. And you're telling me this was a setup? This is stupidity. This is courting death. This is throwing the Chow family's reputation on the ground for the entire city of A to trample on. He began to cough violently, his face flushing crimson. His secretary hurried over with a glass of water, which he impatiently pushed away. Jin Yin. What's the word from Jin Yan's side? Chow Jinshan gasped for breath, struggling to compose himself, a sharp, calculating glint flashing in his eyes. He knew that damage control was now the top priority. Xiao Guodong's expression grew even more grim. He stammered, "We can't reach him. Jin Yin himself won't answer his phone. His lawyer has a very firm stance. He said they reserve the right to pursue legal action against Yumming, and..." He swallowed hard, and he implied that Mr. Jin is furious, and the consequences will be severe. Severe. Xiao Jinshan let out a cold laugh, a deep weariness and a sense of foreboding in his eyes. What kind of person is Jin Yan? He's vindictive. Yumming went after his woman, and in the most despicable way possible. You think he'll let this go? Just wait. The Qiao family's troubles have only just begun. As if to confirm Qiao Jinshan's words, the office door was flung open. The group's CFO, his face pale, rushed in, forgetting all decorum. His voice trembled with panic. Chairman, Mr. Qiao, it's bad. The secondary market. Something's happened in the secondary market. What are you panicking about? Speak clearly. Qiao Jinshan's heart sank as he barked the order. QY stock price. It plummeted at the opening, without any warning. It's like it's being hammered by massive, organized sell orders. In just half an hour, it's dropped more than 15%. And the selling pressure is still increasing. We can't hold it. The CFO's voice was on the verge of tears. What's worse is that rumors are suddenly spreading like wildfire through the market that our group's capital chain is strained, that there are major financial loopholes in several new acquisition projects, and that banks might pull their loans. They're incredibly detailed. Our partners and suppliers are blowing up our phones, demanding to know what's going on. What? Qiao Jinshan and Qiao Guodong cried out in unison, their faces instantly as white as sheets. Qiao Jinshan staggered and fell back into his large executive chair, seeming to age 10 years in an instant. He understood. Jin Yan's revenge wasn't going to be something as simple as legal proceedings. He had directly deployed the most lethal and ruthless financial weapon. This was an attack meant to be fatal, to drag the entire QY group into the abyss. Quick, activate the emergency plan. Use all reserve funds to prop up the market. Contact our friendly institutions and request support. Hold an emergency press conference to debunk the rumors. Now, Qiao Jinshan forced himself to issue the commands, his hoarse voice trembling with a hint of desperation. However, it was all too late. Once a hunt in the capital market begins, it does not stop so easily, especially when the hunter was a predator of Jin Yan's caliber, holding a scandal explosive enough to trigger widespread panic as the fuse. The share price of QY Group, like a kite with its string cut, plummeted wildly amidst a torrential sell-off and panic stampede. 15%, 20%, 25%. The limit down was breached again and again, like layers of fragile, thin paper. On the trading screen, the green numbers representing sell orders flashed maniacally, devouring any faint buying interest that attempted to enter the market. In the trading hall, retail investors stared dumbfounded, a scene of utter misery. Institutional traders' phones rang off the hook, their orders laced with panic. Financial media alerts popped up one after another, their headlines shocking. QY Group stock in flash crash. Plummets 25% in half an hour. Sets record for largest single-day drop. Beset by scandal. QY Group suspected of liquidity crisis. Banks urgently assessing risk. Fierce short-selling attack. Mysterious behemoth targets QY. The Qiao Empire teeters. The headquarters of the Qiao Group was in total chaos. Emergency meetings were held one after another, the executives' faces ashen. Qiao Jinshan personally called the presidents of several major banks with whom he had deep ties, only to receive either a vague, "We are assessing the situation," or a cold, "We will act according to the contract." So much for friendship. In the face of immense risk, so-called connections proved utterly fragile. Meanwhile, the source of this financial tsunami, Jin Yan, was on the other side of the city, in his top-floor duplex penthouse with its tight security and breathtaking views. Before the massive, curved floor-to-ceiling windows, the bustling CBD of City A lay in full view. Sunlight streamed through the glass, spilling onto the dark, mirror-like floor. The living room was Spartan, furnished only with a set of cold, hardline sofas and an enormous electronic screen wall, displaying global financial markets in real time. On the screen, the stock chart for QY Group showed the price curve plunging into the abyss at a near-vertical angle, without a hint of hesitation. On adjacent split screen, negative news and panic comments about QY scrolled endlessly. Dressed in comfortable, dark gray loungewear, Jin Yan stood silently before the screen, holding a cup of black coffee. The swirling steam blurred his expressionless face. The gauze on his right hand had been removed, revealing a new, slightly pale pink scar on his palm. His phone vibrated. It was an encrypted message from K. Boss, QY's drop has exceeded 30%, triggering the first-level circuit breaker. Floating profits on short positions are immense. Public sentiment continues to sour, and news of 3 banks withdrawing loans has been confirmed. Qiao's application for an emergency trading halt has been rejected. Shall we continue to apply pressure? Jean Yan's gaze shifted from the desperately falling curve on the screen to the forest of skyscrapers outside the window. One of them, the building bearing the huge QY Group logo, now seemed to him to be on the verge of collapse. He took a sip of the bitter black coffee, his fingertip tapping a single word onto the cold screen of his phone. Crush. After a nightmarish opening flash crash and a circuit breaker halt, QY Group stock was suspended from trading for 1 hour. However, this hour offered no respite for the Qiao family. Instead, it became a breeding ground for fermenting panic. When trading resumed, a torrential sell-off, like a bursting dam, instantly slammed the stock price into an even deeper abyss. 40%, 50%, 60%. Each tick of the numbers was like a sledgehammer, striking hard at the heart of everyone in the Qiao Group and shattering the last vestiges of hope for any onlookers. The Qiao Group's headquarters had long lost its usual bustle and order, replaced by a deathly silence and chaos akin to the apocalypse. Employees had no heart for work, huddling in small groups, their faces pale with panic as they scrolled through their phones, watching the constantly refreshing, despair-inducing stock prices and news. The executive conference room was thick with smoke, the atmosphere so oppressive it was suffocating. Qiao Zhinshan looked as if he had aged 20 years overnight, his eyes sunken, his hair disheveled. His once sharp gaze was now nothing but cloudy exhaustion and despair. Qiao Guodong was even worse, slumped in his chair like a walking corpse, his eyes vacant. Chairman, the banks. Our 3 main partner banks have sent official notices, demanding early repayment of some loans and freezing all subsequent credit lines. The CFO's voice, choked with sobs, broke the dead silence. Our suppliers. Over half of them are demanding cash on delivery, or they'll stop shipments. Several M&A projects under negotiation. The other parties have all terminated. The stock price, it's fallen below the net asset value. The market cap evaporation is over 70%. One piece of bad news after another, like cold bullets, completely sank the already riddled giant ship that was the Qiao Group. The Great Tower was collapsing, and nothing could be done to save it. And at this moment, in the Ling family's villa in the west of the city, once a bustling place, the atmosphere had similarly dropped to a freezing point. It had been 2 days since Ling Wei was brought back from the Platinum Palace Hotel by her parents. As if she had lost her soul, she curled up in a corner of her room, still wearing the clothes she had on when she was brought back. Her hair was greasy, her face was ashen, and her eyes were empty. The nightmare of that night at the Platinum Palace, Jean Yan's cold gaze, Qiao Yuming's miserable screams, Lin Shan's betrayal, and the overwhelming ridicule and abuse on the internet were like countless venomous insects, gnawing at her nerves day and night. She didn't dare to look at her phone, didn't dare to go out, and didn't even dare to look in the mirror. Bang! From the living room downstairs came the sound of her father, Ling Jinghong, slamming his fist on the table in a rage, followed by his furious roar. Useless! All of you are useless! That little bastard from the Qiao family has ruined us. And you, he pointed at his wife, Zhou Meiwan, who was sitting on the sofa, weeping silently. Look at the fine daughter you've raised. Shameless. She has completely disgraced the Ling family. And now look, Jean Yin wants a divorce. He wants the betrothal gifts back. He wants Cloud Top back. Our Ling family has become the laughingstock of the entire city, eh? How are we supposed to show our faces in our social circle in the future? Zhou Meiwan cried even harder. Why are you yelling at me? Weren't you the one who pushed for this marriage in the first place? Said Jean Yin was a golden goose. Now that something has happened, it's all our fault. If I hadn't pushed for it, what kind of family is the Jean family? Marrying into their family was a step up for us. Who knew your daughter would be so disappointing on her wedding night with another man? Ling Zhenghong was trembling with anger, unable to continue. Dad, Mom, stop arguing. Ling Wei's older brother, Ling Feng, interrupted them irritably. He had just returned from outside, his face equally grim. What's the use of arguing? The most important thing now is how to deal with Jin Yin. His lawyer, Chun, sent another letter today. The wording is even harsher than last time. They're giving us 3 days to return the 1.28 million betrothal gift in full. Also, Weiwei has to move out of the cloud-top apartment immediately and return the keys and access cards. Otherwise, we'll see them in court. And Ling Feng's voice lowered. Lawyer Chen hinted that Jin Yin has something even more exciting in his possession. If we don't cooperate, he wouldn't mind letting the whole of city enjoy Weiwei's performance on her wedding night. This last sentence struck Ling Wei like a bolt of lightning. She jerked her head up from the corner, her eyes filled with extreme terror. Something more exciting? It was that surveillance video. Jin Yin was going to make public the footage of her disheveled state that night, being pulled by Qiao Yuming, and even her unguarded words saying Qiao Yuming was better than Jin Yin. No. Don't. Ling Wei let out a piercing scream, scrambling out of her room and rushing to the top of the stairs, crying out to those downstairs. Dad, Mom, brother, you can't let him release it. You can't. I'll die. I'll really die. Give it to him. Give him whatever he wants. The betrothal gift. The apartment. Give all to him. I'm begging you. Agree to his terms. Tears and snot streamed down her face. She looked like a mad woman, without a trace of the arrogant demeanor of the former Miss Ling. Seeing his daughter in this state, Ling Zhenghong felt a mixture of anger, resentment, and heartache. In the end, all his fury transformed into a profound sense of powerlessness and fear of Jin Yan's methods. He collapsed onto the sofa, covering his face. He knew that Jin Yan had them by the throat. For a family like theirs, reputation was sometimes more important than life itself. Especially if that video was released, Ling Wei's life would be utterly ruined, and the Ling family would be nailed to a pillar of shame. Agree to his terms. Ling Zhenghong's voice was hoarse, filled with exhaustion and humiliation. The betrothal gift. The family will scrape it together and return it to him. Cloud top. Have Weiwei move out. Tell him we admit defeat. 3 days later, the doorbell of Jin Yan's top-floor duplex apartment rang. Lawyer Chen stood outside with a young assistant, carrying an inconspicuous black briefcase. Jin Yan opened the door himself. He was dressed in a simple black shirt and trousers, his figure tall and straight. He looked well, and the scar on his right palm had scabbed over, adding a touch of cold hardness to his demeanor. Mr. Jin, Lawyer Chen nodded slightly. Gomein. Jin Yan stepped aside. In the living room, Lawyer Chen placed the black briefcase on the polished coffee table and opened it. Inside were neatly stacked, brand-new 100 yuan bills, a total of 128 stacks. Mr. Jin, the Ling family has returned the 1.28 million betrothal gift in cash, in full. Here is the list. Please have a look. Lawyer Chen handed over a document. Jin Yan glanced at it, but didn't take it. His gaze fell on the red bills in the case, his expression unchanging, as if he were looking at a pile of meaningless paper. He responded faintly. Additionally, Lawyer Chen continued his report, his tone steady. Ms. Ling Wei has already moved out of the Cloud 9 apartment this morning, accompanied by Mr. Ling Feng. The keys and access cards have been retrieved. All her personal belongings within the apartment have also been completely cleared out. This is the handover confirmation. He handed over another document. This time, Jin Yan accepted it, his gaze lingering for a moment on Ling Wei's signature. The signature was messy and trembling, revealing the owner's extreme panic and humiliation. A barely perceptible, cold arc lifted the corner of his mouth as he casually tossed the document onto the coffee table. What about the Qiao family? He asked, his voice betraying no emotion. QY Group stock has hit its limit down for 3 consecutive days, with no trading volume. The cumulative decline has exceeded 90%, and its market value has all but evaporated. This morning, the exchange officially announced that QY Group has triggered the conditions for compulsory delisting due to its stock price persistently falling below its par value and its failure to disclose the audited annual report on time. The stock will enter the delisting consolidation period starting next week. Lawyer Chen's tone carried a professional coldness. The Chiao Group is, in effect, bankrupt. Chiao Jinshan has been hospitalized due to a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. All assets under the names of Chiao Guodong and Xiao Yuming have been frozen by multiple creditors. Xiao Yuming himself has been formally arrested by the procuratorate on suspicion of indecent assault. Jin Yin walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the bustling city below. The sun was bright, the traffic relentless. The building that once bore the huge QY Group logo now stood under the sun like a giant, cold tombstone. "Understood," he said faintly. Lawyer Chun and his assistant quietly withdrew. Only Jin Yin was left in the living room. He turned, his gaze falling on the black briefcase filled with cash on the coffee table, and on the handover confirmation signed with Ling Wei's name. There was none of the imagined ecstasy, nor was there the slightest bit of pity. There was only a cold, settled calm, like dust finally settling. He walked to the bar and poured himself a glass of purified water. The cold liquid slid down his throat. The fruit of revenge was not sweet, only a cold sense of satisfaction that came with completing a mission. He picked up his phone. The screen lit up, the wallpaper a deep, starry sky. He opened his contacts and deleted the number labeled Ling Wei. The action was crisp and decisive, without a trace of hesitation. Then he dialed Kay's encrypted line. "Boss." Kay's voice was as steady as ever. "After QY is delisted, close the short positions." Jin Yan's voice was devoid of any ripple. "Transfer the profits to the offshore account." "Understood." Kay's reply was concise and powerful. The call ended. Jin Yan drained the remaining water in his glass. He walked to the giant wall of electronic screens and turned off the one displaying QY's death-like K-line chart. The world was quiet. He picked up the suit jacket from the sofa and draped it over his arm. It was time to go to the company. One storm had ended, but countless battles awaited him. The market vacuum left by the Chiao family needed someone to fill it. As for Ling Wei, that name, along with that farce, had become a trivial and thoroughly cleansed stain on his life. He walked towards the door, his steps steady and strong. A new day had begun. A City Intermediate People's Court, Civil Division. The late autumn sun slanted through the tall windows, casting dappled light on the polished marble floor, yet it failed to dispel the unique solemnity and coldness of the courtroom. A few people sat scattered in the public gallery, mostly financial reporters who had caught wind of the news. Their long and short camera lenses were aimed at the plaintiffs' and defendants' tables, awaiting the final curtain to fall on this highly watched divorce of the century. At the plaintiff's table, Jin Yin sat in a well-tailored, dark gray bespoke suit, his posture as straight as a pine tree. His expression was calm, his gaze profound. He just sat there quietly, as if all the surrounding noise had nothing to do with him. Beside him was the stern and meticulous Lawyer Chun. At the defendant's table sat Ling Wei, like a flower that had been ravaged by a storm and was rapidly wilting. She wore an unseasonable and somewhat cheap-looking off-white dress. Her hair was simply tied up, and her face was devoid of makeup, so pale it was bloodless. The dark circles under her eyes were heavy, and her gaze was empty and dull, imbued with the numbness of a soul that had been completely drained. Beside her were the lawyer whom the Ling family had hired at great expense, but who now wore a grave and helpless expression, and her father, Ling Jinghong, whose face was ashen and who seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. The trial proceeded in a nearly suffocating and oppressive atmosphere. As the plaintiff's attorney, Lawyer Chen's logic was clear and his words were sharp, like the most precise instrument, pushing the proceedings forward step by step. He presented the notarized prenuptial agreement in court, its terms clear and explicit. He displayed the crucial, unmistakable surveillance footage from the Platinum Palace Hotel suite. The most indecent parts were omitted, but it was enough to prove Ling Wei's fault and the unlawful actions of Chiao Yuming and the others. He played the audio recording of Ling Wei from the Truth or Dare game, where she said, "Of course you're fun, young Master Chiao. Much better than some clueless block of wood." Finally, he submitted the bank records confirming the Ling family had returned the $1.28 million bride price, along with the handover confirmation for Ling Wei's departure from the Cloud Top apartment. Each piece of evidence was like a cold hammer, striking heavily upon the hearts of Ling Wei and her family. As the evidence was presented, Ling Wei's body trembled uncontrollably. She buried her head even lower, her nails digging so deeply into her palms that they left crescent-shaped, bloody marks. Ling Zhenghong's face turned from ashen to ghostly white, a fine sheen of cold sweat beading on his forehead. He tried to speak up in rebuttal several times, only to be silenced by the intense glare of his own lawyer. The Ling family's lawyer attempted a final, desperate struggle. He emphasized that marriage is not easy, that Ling Wei was young and naive, that the wedding night hazing was a custom. He tried to angle for a little leeway in the division of assets, to at least secure some of Ling Wei's personal belongings or jewelry. Your Honor, Lawyer Chen stood up, his voice steady and powerful, carrying an undeniable sense of finality. My client, Mr. Jin Yin, entered into this marriage based on loyalty and trust. However, the defendant, Ms. Ling Wei, on their wedding night, flagrantly violated her marital duties. Her behavior was improper. She engaged in interactions with others that were detrimental to the couple's feelings and dignity, and which led to others inflicting unlawful harm upon my client and the defendant herself. This has caused irreparable and substantial damage to the marital relationship. Her actions constitute gross fault as stipulated by the marriage law. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the trembling figure in the defendant's seat, devoid of any warmth. Based on the explicit terms of the prenuptial agreement and the facts of the defendant's fault, we stand by our claims. 1. That the plaintiff and defendant be granted a divorce. 2. That due to her gross fault, the defendant, Ms. Ling Wei, is not entitled to any division of the couple's joint property. 3. That the Cloud Top apartment registered under the defendant, Ms. Ling Wei's name, in accordance with the prenuptial agreement's gift clause, which is contingent on the duty of loyalty, be repossessed by the plaintiff, Mr. Jin Yin. 4. The defendant, Ms. Ling Wei, has already cleared out her personal belongings, and there are no other property disputes between the two parties. As for the so-called custom mentioned by the defendant's lawyer, Lawyer Chen's voice suddenly turned cold, laced with a sharp-edged mockery. No custom can be a fig leaf for trampling on the dignity of the law or infringing upon the legal rights of others. Nor can it be an excuse for Ms. Ling Wei's own indulgence and the humiliation of her spouse. A wedding night is not a lawless land. Lawyer Chen's words echoed in the silent courtroom like a final verdict. The Ling family's lawyer opened his mouth, but ultimately sat back down in defeat, unable to utter another word. Ling Zhenghong closed his eyes in anguish. The presiding judge conferred in low voices with the two assessors for a moment. The verdict will now be announced. The judge's gavel struck, the sound loud and solemn. This court finds that the emotional bond between the plaintiff, Jin Yin, and the defendant, Ling Wei, has indeed broken down. The cause of this breakdown is the defendant Ling Wei's gross fault during the course of the marriage. In accordance with Articles 32 and 39 of the Marriage Law of the People's Republic of China and the terms of the parties' prenuptial agreement, the judgment is as follows. 1. The divorce between the plaintiff, Jin Yin, and the defendant, Ling Wei, is granted. 2. Concerning the division of joint marital property, due to the defendant Ling Wei's gross fault and the explicit terms of the prenuptial agreement, the defendant Ling Wei is not entitled to any division of the joint marital property. 3. The property located at Unit XXX, Building X, Cloud Top International Apartments, XX Road, XX District, this city, in accordance with the prenuptial agreement, belongs to the plaintiff, Jin Yin. It is hereby confirmed by this court that the defendant Ling Wei moved out on YMMDD and the keys and access cards have been returned. 4. It is hereby confirmed by this court that the defendant Ling Wei has returned the bride price of 1,280,000 RMB, Yen 1, 280,000. 5. The court cost for this case shall be borne by the defendant, Ling Wei. If any party is not satisfied with this judgment, Ling Wei couldn't hear the rest of the words clearly. The word divorce was like two red-hot branding irons, searing her heart. No right to divide property, the repossession of Cloud Top, the return of the bride price. Every word was like a resounding slap across the face of her once proud identity as the great young lady of the Ling family. It had not just knocked her back to her original state, but ground her into the dust. She had lost completely, left with nothing. Reputation, marriage, wealth, dignity. Everything had been turned to ash and smoke by Jean Yan's cold, precise calculations, and merciless counterattack. In the public gallery, the shutters of the reporters' cameras clicked furiously, capturing Ling Wei's devastated, ashen-faced, and wretched appearance at this moment. The presiding judge declared the court adjourned. The sound of the gavel falling was like the final rest marking the end of this farce. Jean Yin stood up and adjusted the cuffs of his suit, his movements composed and elegant. He didn't even spare another glance at the defendant's dock, as if the person sitting there was merely an insignificant stranger. He gave a slight nod to Lawyer Chun and prepared to leave. Jean Yin! A shriek so shrill it became distorted tore through the solemnity that had not yet dissipated in the courtroom. Ling Wei, like a cornered beast, shot up from the defendant's dock. Her eyes were crimson and bloodshot, her face a mask of ultimate madness, resentment, and despair. She recklessly shoved aside the chair in front of her and, heedless of everything, lunged towards Jean Yin. Her long fingernails, like the claws of a vengeful spirit, clawed straight for his face. "It was you. It was all your fault. You devil. You ruined me. I'll fight you to the death." It all happened so suddenly. Gasps erupted from the public gallery. The reporters' cameras focused in an instant. Just as the tips of Ling Wei's fingers were about to touch Jean Yan's cheek, Jean Yan moved. He did not retreat, nor did he block. With extreme calm, as if he had practiced it 1,000 times, he inclined his body to the right, a movement so slight yet exquisitely precise. The motion was almost imperceptible, yet it accurately avoided Ling Wei's frenzied grasp. Ling Wei had thrown all her strength into the lunge. With her target suddenly gone, the immense inertia made it impossible for her to stop. Like a broken string kite, she staggered forward and collapsed in a wretched heap. Thud! She fell heavily onto the cold, hard marble floor. Sharp pain shot through her knees and elbows. Her meticulously styled hair was completely disheveled, and her expensive dress was stained with dust. She lay sprawled on the ground like a crushed, hideous insect. A dead silence fell upon the courtroom. Only Ling Wei's suppressed, pained sobs could be heard as she lay on the floor. Jean Yin stood where he was, looking down from his superior height at the woman at his feet who was once his wife. His gaze was placid, devoid of anger or satisfaction, containing only a pure coldness completely stripped of emotion, and a hint of undisguised contempt. He lowered his head slightly and smoothed the front of his suit jacket, which had wrinkled slightly from his movement. His actions were slow and deliberate, imbued with an elegance and indifference that seemed etched into his very bones. Then he spoke. His voice was not loud, yet it carried clearly to every corner of the courtroom, like a final verdict, crashing down coldly upon Ling Wei's back. "My bed." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Ling Wei's currently wretched state, the corner of his mouth lifting into a faint, yet razor-sharp, arc. "You are not worthy of it." With that, he did not linger, not even sparing another glance at the broken woman on the floor. He strode away with steady steps, accompanied by Lawyer Chun, pursued by countless camera flashes. Amidst Ling Zhenghong's despairing gaze and Ling Wei's heart-wrenching wails, he walked out of the courtroom with unhurried composure. The late autumn sunlight, pouring through the courthouse's tall glass doors, cast a dazzling golden edge on his upright figure, completely severing the mess and despair behind him into another world. The heavy glass door of the courthouse slowly closed behind Jean Yin, completely shutting out Ling Wei's heart-wrenching wails, Ling Zhenghong's desperate shouts, and the clamorous questions of the reporters inside. Within the doors lay a collapsed ruin. Outside was the crisp air of late autumn and countless camera lenses flashing with harsh light, aimed at him. "Mr. Jean, are you satisfied with the divorce verdict?" "President Jean, Miss Ling Wei lost control in court. Do you feel she brought it upon herself? There are rumors that the collapse of the Chow Corporation is also related to you. Can you respond to that?" "President Jean, look over here." The reporters, like sharks that had scented blood, instantly swarmed him, their microphones and cameras nearly shoving into his face. All sorts of sharp, gossipy, and even maliciously leading questions were hurled at him. Jin Yin did not break his stride. Lawyer Chun and two burly, grim-faced bodyguards who were already waiting outside quickly stepped forward. Like two moving walls, they forcefully separated the surging crowd, clearing a path for Jin Yan. Faced with the noisy questions and flashing lights, Jin Yan's face remained expressionless. He didn't even lift an eyelid, as if the reporters and their cameras were merely insignificant dust by the roadside. He walked straight towards the Maybach S680 parked at the courthouse entrance, a car with cold, hard lines and a pitch-black body. The car door was respectfully pulled open by a bodyguard. Just as he bent down to get into the car, a particularly sharp female voice, laced with obvious provocation, pierced through the clamor. President Jin, your ex-wife, Miss Ling Wei, is now disgraced and has nothing. Don't you feel any guilt at all? After all, you were husband and wife for a time, and there should be some lingering affection. Jin Yan's movements paused. He slowly straightened up and turned around. The late autumn sunlight fell on his sharply defined profile, plating it with a cold, hard golden edge. He didn't look at the female reporter who asked the question. His deep gaze swept calmly over the dark crowd in front of him, finally resting on the solemn lintel of the courthouse. The corner of his mouth curved upwards, extremely slowly, into a very slight, yet razor-sharp arc. It wasn't a smile, but more like a silent, cold mockery. Then he spoke. His voice was not loud, yet it carried a strange, penetrating power, clearly suppressing all the clamor. Affection. He repeated the word, the end of the sound rising slightly, filled with undisguised ridicule. My affection is only for those who deserve it. As for her, he tilted his head slightly, his gaze seeming to penetrate the thick courthouse doors, seeing the wretched figure inside. His tone suddenly turned cold, as if quenched in ice. Is she worthy? As his voice fell, he didn't linger. He bent down and sat neatly in the car. The car door slammed shut with a thud, isolating all the prying eyes and clamor from the outside. The Maybach started smoothly, merged into the traffic, and soon disappeared at the end of the street. Left at the courthouse entrance was a group of reporters, looking at each other in dismay, stunned by that icy aura, and that one question that pierced people's hearts like an ice pick. Is she worthy? Inside the car, isolated from the disturbances of the outside world, only the deep sound of a cello flowed from the top-tier sound system. Jin Yin leaned back in the rear seat, closing his eyes to rest. Chen Lu sat in the front passenger seat, glanced at his boss's calm and impassive face in the rearview mirror, and reported in a low voice. Mr. Jin, the team will continue to follow up on the subsequent public opinion monitoring and guidance to ensure that it will not have any negative impact on you and the group. Also, the asset auction for the Chow family's bankruptcy liquidation is scheduled for the beginning of next month. Jin Yan responded faintly, his eyes still closed, as if the farce just now had never happened. Ling Wei's world, at the moment the courthouse doors closed, completely plunged into eternal night. She was practically carried out of the court by Ling Feng and her lawyer, dodging the frantic pursuit of reporters, fleeing back to the Ling family's villa, which now seemed particularly deserted and oppressive, like a rat scurrying across the street. The verdict felt like a red-hot branding iron, searing her soul until it screamed. To leave with nothing, to have absolutely nothing. Even the last shred of dignity had been torn to pieces by Jin Yin in public. She locked herself in her room, smashing everything she could smash, crying and cursing hysterically, cursing Jin Yin for his ruthlessness, cursing Xiao Yuming for his depravity, cursing Lin Shan for her betrayal, and cursing fate for its injustice. However, no matter how she vented, she could not change the cold, hard fact. She was no longer the high and mighty young lady of the Ling family. She was a discarded wife, publicly scorned by her husband, and completely expelled from high society. The Ling family was also shamed because of her. Ling Jinghong's company business plummeted, and former partners who had called him a brother now avoided him like the plague. Zhou Meiwan washed her face with tears all day, her eyes filled with disappointment and resentment when she looked at her. Even the servants in the house had unconcealed contempt in their eyes. Wei, what are your plans for the future? A few days later, seeing her daughter's increasingly gaunt and skeletal appearance, Zhou Meijuan's heart ached after all, and she asked tentatively, "What plans?" Ling Wei raised her head, her eyes vacant, then a twisted, desperate light ignited within them. "I still have friends. I still have Shan Shan. She said she would help me." As if clutching at the last straw, she frantically dialed Lin Shan's number. However, from the other end of the line, there was only a cold, busy tone, or the call was directly hung up. A WeChat message was sent, only to be met with a glaring red exclamation mark. She had been blocked. Lin Shan, you bitch. You will die a horrible death." Ling Wei cursed wildly at the phone screen, despair flooding over her like a cold tide. She finally understood that her so-called friends, after she lost the halo of being Mrs. Jean and lost her usefulness, ran faster than anyone else. With nowhere to turn, she remembered the only capital she had left, which she had once been proud of, her beauty and her body. She dug out the sexiest, most expensive dress from her closet, those personal items that Jean Yin disdained to take back, put on heavy makeup to try to hide the haggardness and despair on her face, and walked into a high-end club in City A that she had previously looked down upon, but was said to be a place to make quick money. Dim and hazy lights, deafening music, and the air filled with the smell of alcohol and cheap perfume. Ling Wei fought back her discomfort as she sat by the bar, forcing what she hoped was a seductive smile. Her eyes scanned the crowd, searching for potential prey. Well, if it isn't our former Mrs. Jean," a sleazy voice sounded behind her, dripping with undisguised malice and ridicule. Ling Wei's body stiffened, and she whipped her head around. A few young men in flashy clothes, clearly spoiled scions, surrounded her. The one in the lead was Zhao Ming, the same rich heir who had tried to hit on her at a banquet only to be publicly scorned by her. Zhao Ming looked Ling Wei up and down, his gaze like someone appraising a piece of merchandise, filled with naked contempt and desire. TSK, how the tables have turned. Mrs. Jean. Oh no, should I call you Miss Ling now? What's the matter? Mr. Jean doesn't want you anymore. So you've stooped to coming to a place like this to have some fun? The sycophants beside him burst into harsh, mocking laughter. Young Master Zhao, don't say that. Maybe Miss Ling is just here to experience life. Exactly. A woman Mr. Jean has slept with must taste different. Name your price, Miss Ling. Ha ha ha. The vulgar words splashed over her like filthy water. Ling Wei's face instantly flushed crimson, and she trembled all over with humiliation. She shot to her feet, grabbing a glass of wine from the bar, intending to throw it at them. Get lost. Who the hell do you think you are? Zhao Ming was quick. He seized her wrist, his grip so tight she cried out in pain. He snatched the glass from her. A vicious smile played on his lips as he leaned close to her ear and said, word by word, in a voice only the two of them could hear, Ling Wei, do you still think you're the high and mighty Mrs. Jean? Wake up. You're nothing but a worn-out shoe that Jean Yin got tired of and kicked to the curb. Who in A City doesn't know about that little incident on your wedding night? Still pretending to be so pure. He shoved her backward abruptly. Ling Wei stumbled, her back slamming painfully against the bar. Zhao Ming raised a glass, and before Ling Wei's terrified eyes, flicked his wrist. Splash! The ice-cold liquid, mixed with ice cubes, poured down over her meticulously styled hair and face. Her heavy makeup was instantly ruined, and her expensive dress was soaked through, clinging to her body. She was a complete mess. Ah! Ling Wei let out a piercing shriek. Filthy! Zhao Ming casually tossed the empty glass to the floor, where it shattered with a crisp sound. He dusted off his hands in disgust, as if he had touched something unclean, then sneered loudly at the gawking crowd. A worn-out shoe slept in by Mr. Jean, and still so damn expensive? I wouldn't take her even if she paid me. What bad luck! The jeers, whistles, and pointed murmurs were like countless needles, stabbing viciously into Ling Wei's ears and her heart. She collapsed onto the cold floor. Liquid dripped from her hair, and it was impossible to tell if it was wine or tears on her face. Her gaze was completely unfocused, filled with nothing but boundless despair and coldness. She finally understood. Jean Yan's words, "Do you deserve it?" weren't an insult, but the truth. She, Ling Wei, in Jin Yan's world, in the Vanity Fair of A City, had been reduced to the lowest, most wretched laughingstock. Even her body, which she once took pride in, had become trash for others to trample on and mock at will. Meanwhile, at the other end of the city, another reckoning was quietly underway. In a dilapidated, moldy-smelling rental unit in the suburbs, Lin Shan was curled up on the only piece of furniture, a creaky wooden bed, covered by a thin, foul-smelling blanket. Her face was sallow, her eyes sunken, and her greasy hair was matted. The glamour of her former socialite days was long gone. Ever since that night at the Platinum Palace, her world had also collapsed. Xiao Yuming was in jail. The Qiao family was struggling to save itself. No one had time for her. Her so-called best friends, upon learning she had offended Jin Yan, all drew a clear line, some even kicking her while she was down. Her father's small company was also implicated and on the verge of bankruptcy. Her family had cut her off financially. What was even more terrifying was that, to maintain her glamorous lifestyle, she had, at Xiao Yuming's urging, taken out numerous high-interest loans to buy luxury goods and invest in shady projects. Now, the menacing debt collectors were at her door. Bang, bang, bang. The violent pounding on the door started again, accompanied by a man's coarse roar. Lin Shan, you damn bitch. Open up. Don't think you can just hide. Pay up. If you don't pay today, I'll sell you to the filthiest brothel there is. Terrified, Lin Shan trembled all over, pulling the blanket tightly over her head, her teeth chattering. Fear coiled around her heart like a venomous snake. Boss, wasn't this broad pretty glamorous before? The one who ran with that Xiao Yuming. Another voice sounded from outside, thick with a lewd chuckle. I heard she almost got Mr. Jin's new bride. Ha! This piece of trash. Although she's down on her luck now, she used to be high society. She must be fun to play with. How about? Pa, she's just the sidekick of that worn-out shoe Mr. Jin was done with. I wouldn't touch her. She's filthy. The man banging on the door spat, his tone even more vicious. But if you can't pay with money, you can pay with your body. Get her out here. Tonight, she's going to work the tables at the Nightingale. She can leave when the debt is paid off. No, I'm begging you. No. When Lin Shan heard the words the Nightingale, the most notorious and chaotic nightclub in a city, she was scared out of her wits and let out a piercing cry. I'll pay the money. I'll definitely pay it back. Please, just give me a few more days. More days? How many days have I already given you? Today is the final deadline. The man outside lost his patience and started kicking the door more frantically. The old wooden door groaned, unable to bear the abuse. Bang! With a loud crash, the lock was kicked open. Two burly, tattooed men with fleshy faces stormed in. The pungent smell of smoke and sweat instantly filled the small room. Ah! Lin Shan let out a desperate scream, like a lamb to the slaughter, as one of the men roughly grabbed her by the hair and dragged her off the bed. You damn bitch. You refuse the easy way, so you get the hard way. The man slapped Lin Shan hard across the face, making her see stars and her mouth bleed. Take her away. The other man roared impatiently. Lin Shan was dragged out of the rented room like a dead dog. She cried, struggled, and begged, but it was all in vain. The neighbors shut their doors tightly. No one dared to interfere. She was roughly shoved into a shabby van, which then sped towards the abyss that devoured all light, known as the Nightingale. The neon lights outside the window flew backwards, reflecting on Lin Shan's face, which was twisted with fear and despair. She was finally tasting the bitter fruit of her own sowing. What she once thought was exciting and fun had ultimately dragged her into a real hell. And the source of it all began on that wedding night, with her encouragement of Ling Wei, with their reckless trampling of Jin Yan's bottom line. The sign for the Nightingale flickered in the night with an ambiguous and dangerous red glow, like a gaping, blood-red mouth ready to devour someone. Lin Shan's cries were completely swallowed by the deafening music. The late autumn chill was growing stronger, but the financial district of a city was still brightly lit and bustling with activity. A highly anticipated auction was taking place in the top-floor banquet hall of the Grand Hyatt Hotel. Gathered here were the top capital magnates and industry giants from a city and the surrounding regions. The air was thick with the scent of money, power, and a silent game of wits. The items up for auction were several of the most core and valuable assets spun off from the former Chow Group after its bankruptcy and liquidation, including a Grade A office building in a prime CBD location and a plot of industrial land in the suburbs with great development potential. These had once been the proud cornerstones of the Chow Empire, but were now mere remnants waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. The auctioneer stood on the stage, his voice loud and his speech rapid, stirring the tense atmosphere of the venue. Bidding paddles rose and fell, and the numbers on the giant electronic screen refreshed constantly, each jump fraying countless nerves. 380 million. Mr. Number 18 bids 380 million. Are there any higher bids? 385 million. Ms. Number 7. 400 million. Excellent. Mr. Number 12 bids 400 million. 400 million going once. The competition was exceptionally fierce. Although the Chow family had fallen, the intrinsic value of these assets was undeniable, and many coveted them. Just as the price stalled at 420 million, a low, calm voice with a strange, penetrating quality sounded from the back of the hall. 500 million. The voice wasn't loud. It was like a giant boulder dropped into a calm lake, instantly silencing the entire hall for a moment. Swoosh! All eyes turned in unison towards the sound. There, in an inconspicuous corner at the back of the hall, sat Jean Yin, leaning back leisurely in a large armchair, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark black suit. He wasn't holding a paddle. He merely raised his hand slightly. Beside him, Chun Lu immediately lifted the bidding paddle. The number was 1. Number 1. Mr. Jean, number 1, bids 500 million. The auctioneer's voice carried a hint of barely concealed excitement and awe. 500 million. A direct jump of 80 million. This was no longer a bid, but a declaration. A declaration of his determination to win this asset, and a declaration of unquestionable power. A wave of suppressed gasps and low murmurs rippled through the hall. The complexions of the several buyers, who had been competing fiercely just moments before, all changed. They exchanged glances, and finally, all helplessly lowered their bidding paddles. Compete with Jean Yin in terms of financial resources? Especially at this moment, after he had just crushed the Chow family with thunderous means, carrying the immense prestige of his victory? That would be no different from an egg striking a stone. 500 million going once. 500 million going twice. 500 million going 3 times. The auction hammer fell heavily. Sold. Congratulations to Mr. Jean from seat number 1 for successfully acquiring the lot for 500 million. Applause rang out, not enthusiastically, but filled more with awe and complex emotions. Everyone's gaze focused on that corner. Accompanied by Chun Liu, Jean Yin slowly stood up. He didn't look at the stage, nor at the surrounding gazes of awe, jealousy, or inquiry. He merely straightened the cuff of his suit, his movements calm and unhurried. He strode towards the signing area to the side of the auction stage. His steps were steady, each one seeming to land on the heartstrings of the crowd. A spotlight followed his figure, illuminating his tall and straight posture like that of a king. At the signing table, the liquidation official and the lawyer were already waiting respectfully. Jean Yin signed his name on the document. His strokes were sharp, the force of the pen penetrating the paper. As the final stroke fell, the office building that symbolized the Chow family's former glory, along with that piece of land full of potential, officially changed hands. Congratulations, CEO Jean. The liquidation official handed over a copy of the document with both hands, his tone respectful. Jean Yin gave a slight nod, took the document, and passed it casually to Chun Liu behind him. His gaze seemed to pierce through the magnificent dome of the banquet hall, landing somewhere far beyond. Acquiring these assets was not just for profit, but to declare the complete end of an old era and the beginning of a new order dominated by him, Jean Yin. CEO Jean, CEO Li of Apex Capital, is hosting a private dinner tonight to celebrate with you. What are your thoughts? Chun Liu asked in a low voice. Cancel it. Jean Yin's voice was devoid of any ripple. Back to the company. Yes, sir. Under the watch of countless eyes, Jean Yin did not linger, nor did he exchange pleasantries with anyone, walking straight towards the exit. Bodyguards had already cleared a path for him. He walked out of the clamorous banquet hall and into the quiet, private elevator lobby on the hotel's top floor. The elevator doors slowly closed, completely shutting out the glitz and noise from outside. The mirror-like elevator walls reflected his cold, handsome profile. He took out his phone. The screen lit up, the wallpaper still that deep, starry sky. He opened an encrypted messaging app. On it was a single, short message from Kate. Boss, all short-selling profits from QY have been secured and transferred to the designated account. Net profit, 970 million USD. The cold numbers revealed the final spoils of this financial strangulation targeting the Chiao family. Coupled with the high-quality assets won at auction today, the last valuable remnants of the Chiao empire had been completely absorbed by him. Still, there was no expression of elation on Jean Yan's face. Only a cold, all-controlling calm. He had long since tasted the cold flavor of the fruit of revenge. Now, with the dust settled, all that remained was the confirmation of victory and the planning for the future. The elevator descended directly to the exclusive underground garage. The jet-black Maybach waited quietly like a silent beast. Jean Yin settled into the back seat, his body sinking into the soft leather. Chun Liu sat in the front passenger seat and handed over a tablet. CEO Jean, here is the progress plan for the group's key projects for the next quarter, as well as a preliminary research report on emerging Southeast Asian markets. Please take a look. Jean Yin took the tablet, his fingertips swiping quickly across the screen, his gaze sharp and focused. The light from the screen reflected in his deep eyes, flickering with a calm and powerful brilliance. The car pulled smoothly out of the garage and merged into the city's dazzling river of lights. Outside the window, the night view of City 8 was a riot of color, more prosperous than ever before. The collapsed ruins, the Chiao family, the crushed ants, Ling Wei, Lin Shan, were all in the past, rapidly left behind the car, disappearing into the vast night without leaving so much as a ripple. His world had long since moved forward. The Maybach headed towards the tallest, most dazzling skyscraper in the city center, the headquarters of the Huanyu Group. There, countless new battles awaited his conquest, and a vaster territory awaited his expansion. Jean Yan's gaze lifted from the tablet, looking out the window at the steel forest symbolizing power and wealth that was speeding past. His lips, ever so slowly, curled upwards into a distinct and cold arc. In that curve, there was no emptiness, only a pure, cold sense of control, the kind one feels after ascending to the summit over the bones of one's enemies and looking down upon the world, and an absolute confidence in the new journey ahead. The car glided silently into the exclusive underground passage of the Huanyu Tower. The elevator carried him, speeding towards the top-floor office that symbolized supreme authority, nestled in the clouds. A new day, a new chapter, had already begun, and this time, no one could stand in his way again. The end. If you enjoyed it, please give a like. Thanks.